This whole tamasha about ALM mismatch is completely overblown. Is there no ALM mismatch? Yes, there is. For long-term lenders. For people who have 15-year and 20-year assets. For people who have 3-year assets, there is no ALM mismatch. So this whole business of crisis, as is being reported, ad nauseum, I think honestly is overblown. And total of 2 defaults since September, I think is when IFS broke. So in the last 9 months, we've had a grand total of 2 companies defaulting. The total number of registered NBFCs is 9,800 and something. So I think somebody has to sit back and ask, is 2 out of 9,800 a crisis?
This budget, we have a special guest joined in by Raman Agrawal, who is the chairman of Finance Industrial Development Council. Thanks for joining in, sir. So the first primary question that I would like to ask you is, like, whatever the bold reforms that are introduced by the Nirmala Sitharaman in our maiden budget about the NBFC, how do you see those measures?
See, as I said, this budget speech this year and the Honorable Finance Minister, what she announced was quite a landmark in the history of NBFC sector, because there were clear recognition and appreciation of three important facts. Foremost, more than once she talked about, they acknowledged the important role being played by NBFCs when it comes to creating consumption demand or capital formation at the MSME segment. Secondly was a clear recognition of the fact that yes, there is a liquidity crunch facing the sector, because there were debates, people were denying that no, the situation is not serious, but there was a clear acknowledgement. Third, there was also an acknowledgement of the fact that banks had gone risk averse when it came to lending to NBFCs. And the measure announced was very important. Although the quantum is 1 lakh crore, the government has said we will stand guarantee, first loss guarantee up to 6 months, and that to 10% guarantee. Quantum may be small, but the real important aspect and takeaway is a clear message and a nudge given to banks that here Government of India is ready to stand guarantee on the NBFC pool of assets. That shows the confidence they repose in the asset quality. So I think it is a more important message and the nudge given to banks that let us not become risk averse. If on an individual basis the companies, if they have issues, there is no case for them. But let us not paint everybody with the same brush.
So as you mentioned, some reforms that are bold. So also the theme of the meeting in itself suggests that there are some unfinished agenda.
Yeah.
So can you throw some light on unfinished agenda that you are expecting?
So when we say unfinished agenda is that while the signal has come from the government, Honorable Finance Minister and RBI also did act on the very same day, now this has to be carried forward by the banks to a large extent and pick that signal and at least let us get to the September 2018 levels, because there has been a reduction in the bank flow of credit flow. Also, the capital market mutual funds have suddenly shown a sharp decline when it came to taking exposure in the NBFC sector. So the idea is to pick that signal, and then on a long-term basis we need to initiate measures so that such scenarios don't develop. And for that we need to look at funding sources outside the banking system so that there is no over-reliance on banks. And on that front we have suggested creating a refinance mechanism on the lines of National Housing Bank. Maybe Mudra can refinance smaller NBFCs. And we are also talking of restoring priority sector lending status to bank lending to NBFCs for on lending to the priority sector.
So the next question is that the entire crisis started and stirred up after the ILFS defaulting in September last year, and then Diwan Housing and Finance Limited. So how do you see this? And you already said that we can't generalize saying that NBFC is reeling under crisis.
Yeah.
So can you make a comment on that?
See, that's a clear statement. So first of all, let us appreciate that while crudely speaking, any company which is not a bank and is doing financing is an NBFC. Right, but strictly if you look at the way regulatory framework is structured and the business model is structured, housing finance companies are a different ballgame. Right? So Diwan Housing is anyway, I would say to that extent, not an NBFC. It's a HFC. Different regulator, different business model. ILFS again was a player which is into long-term infra financing, where the lending happens 10, 15, 20 years. And the likes of ILFS are only 8 in number out of 9,600 NBFCs. Out of these 8, 5 are owned by the government. So this in no way represents the picture of the NBFC sector. Typical NBFC lending model is 1 to 5, 4-year lending, short tenure, small ticket size, and retail lending, which is into segments like automobiles, MSMEs, consumer goods, or the equipment market. That is where the NBFC model is. So the idea is there is no inherent asset liability mismatch. That is more true for the long term players.
So as NBFCs plays a very vital role in flourishing and thriving economy. So what are your expectations from the government in the future, and what would be your steps that you're going to take as the chairman of this industry?
See, as I said, as on FIDC part, we have initiated dialogues with all the stakeholders. We've had meetings with CM. We have approached Indian Banks Association. And another important aspect is that we have requested RBI and ministries to create a platform where NBFCs, where FIDC as the industry body, should interact on a regular basis with RBI and the ministry. And let us not do a issue-based discussion. Even during the good times, at least twice a year, these meetings can happen where two-way flow of information and dialogue can happen, which will sort out a lot of issues and ensure a smoother delivery, a healthy growth for the sector. That is very important.
So my final question to you is, did this budget live up to your expectations?
I would say yes. May not be in terms of the actual quantum, but certainly in terms of setting the right signals.
Thank you. Thanks for joining us, sir. Thanks.